Hi, welcome everyone. This June 15th, 2021 meeting of the Lake Oswego City Council is now called to order. Ms. Linder, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Buck?
Here.
Councilors Burdick?
Here.
Raff?
Here.
Mbu?
Here.
Mans?
Here.
Wynn?
Here.
Wendland?
Here. Today is a significant day. Not only is it our inaugural meeting in our city's brand new City Hall building, but it's also the City Council's first time meeting together in person in over a year, and this particular City Council's first time meeting together ever. And we're very grateful to be here, to be healthy, and to be blessed with this gorgeous building, which is the product of the work of so many people. The council would like to share with everyone that we are all vaccinated. But out of an abundance of caution, we continue to wear our face coverings, and we appreciate you all doing the same. Thank you, everyone. And with that, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If folks need to use them, restrooms in the new building are located out the back doors and down the hallway on the left-hand side. Our first item on the agenda tonight is public comment. And first we have Don Wayne. Don, please come up to the front.
You'll have to forgive me, I'm a little out of breath climbing all these stairs to this very beautiful welcome hall that we have here. Thank you. I would like to speak primarily about issues that I've raised before in connection with this. This is item 7.2. This is about Parks and Recreation and the Aquatic Center. About traffic and parking and safety issues in the neighborhood immediately adjacent to the location, the golf course. I also have concerns about budgetary issues, particularly the what looks like a significant difference in the operational costs of the pool in relation to projected revenue. But I only have 3 minutes. I want to talk about my primary concern, which is this safety issue. I've raised this issue with the City Council before, and at least two of you, Mayor Buck and Councilor Mans, were there at that time a few years ago when there was this proposal to sell off a portion of the golf course for residential development. My neighbors feel very concerned about the potential increase in traffic, not only up on Stafford and Overlook in that area, which a lot of the discussion is focused on, but in the streets immediately adjacent on the west side of the golf course. Even now, with Lake Ridge High School, the drop-off and pickup at Lake Ridge High School sometimes causes some problems of congestion, and I was talking with a couple of school bus drivers who told me that they've actually had times when they couldn't make the turn from Marjorie onto Cloverleaf because of double parked cars, and that could be a potential emergency hazard for if first responders, particularly fire engines, are trying to get through there. So even though I watched the PAC meeting, the last PAC meeting, and the civil engineer whose name I forget, I'm sorry, was talking about Cloverleaf, and he said, you know, technically it's a no parking zone, but it's an enforcement issue. We're also concerned about all the streets. There's a kind of rectangle, and I live in that area, coming north from Cloverleaf. We're very concerned about what might happen with this development in those streets, particularly because the demographics of the neighborhood have changed a lot. There are a lot more children playing in those streets. There are a lot more senior citizens walking in those streets. And granted, if there is a walkway up, pathway going up from Cloverleaf to the pool, that will become additional walking space. But our area is an area that many people use for walking and for and children for recreational activity, bike riding, skating, skateboards, etc. And the traffic What happens sometimes when people drop their kids off at the school, and this will probably happen if they're dropping kids off to use the walkway to go up to the pool in the recreation center, people sometimes speed when they're coming out of those areas, if they're off to work or if they have other things on their mind. And some of my neighbors have actually expressed real concerns about that factor. So the safety issue and...
Please bring it to a close.
Pardon?
Please bring your comments to a close.
Yes, I will. I would just say the safety issues and the possible change to the character of that neighborhood is a concern to all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next is Meg Wilkinson.
I am completely vaccinated.
Please.
Meg Wilkinson, I live on Marjorie Avenue. $30 million. This is a number I want you to keep in mind as you go through the presentation today. $30 million, 15 of which is coming from the school board and 15 of which is coming from the city. This is what the number has been used throughout this entire process for how much the rec center is going to be costing us. And you know, it's a lot of money. And throughout the process, we've been told that this is going to be plenty to do the traffic the traffic upgrades. It's going to add the pathway to Cloverleaf. It's going to do all these things we want to do. So I was a little concerned and a little relieved when I finally saw the numbers at the rack, on the rack video the other day. So most of the construction costs, all of the construction costs is below the $30 million. The additional is going to be some of the soft costs, which we might be able to get through by some of the waivers from the city. But we're not going to be able to add a whole lot to this. So I want, as you go through, keep it simple, keep it under the $30 million. And I'm asking you all to keep in mind that all the things that we won't be able to do if we go over that $30 million. It was mentioned in the proposal that the use of additional bond would affect the ability to complete some projects from the bond list. This could be the far bike path. This could be the safe routes to school. There's a whole list of projects that we won't be able to do if we exceed that $30 million. So my request to all of you is keep that in mind. $30 million is a maximum amount to go to the parks and the recreation center. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes public comment. Next on our agenda, item 5.1 is resolution 21-22, which is approving the appointment of Sierra Brown as municipal judge pro tem. Would someone like to make a motion to approve Sierra Brown?
Move to approve Sierra Brown as judge pro tem.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Linn, please call the roll.
Mayor Buck,
Yes?
Councilors Burdick,
Yes.
Rapp,
Yes.
Embu,
Yes.
Mans,
Yes.
Linn,
Yes.
and Wenlin.
Yes. And
Motion
welcome.
passes unanimously.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome to the room our municipal judge Shepley and Sierra Brown. I'm going to turn things over to the judge who will swear in Sierra Brown.
All right, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, councilors. Thank you for approving her as pro tem judge in this case. Ms. Brown, if you just stand and raise your right hand, please. Would you repeat after me? I, Sierra Brown,
I, Sierra Brown,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Oregon,
and the Constitution of the State of Oregon,
and I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties
and I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties
of a pro tem judge of the Municipal Court of the City of Lake Oswego,
of a pro tem judge of the Municipal Court of Lake Oswego,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Ms. Brown. Congratulations. We appreciate you serving the community in this way.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Arts Council update. We're glad to have the Executive Director of the Lake Oswego Arts Council, Nicole Nathan, here. Welcome, Ms. Nathan.
Thanks, Sandra.
you.
There we go.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Technology, as you all know, and Wes and I have practiced many times, but here we are. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. I'm so excited to be here with you in this fantastic space and in these beautiful council chambers. I'm Nicole Nathan. I'm the Executive Director for the Arts Council of Lake Oswego, and I have the pleasure of being here today with our Board President, Andrew Gibson. Andrew and I will be providing you with a bit about where we've been, what we're doing at present, and where we're embarking upon for the future. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew.
Great. Thank you, Nicole, and thank you again for having us here. Where we've been, a little history for the uninitiated here about arts in Lake Oswego. The public art collection of the city of Lake Oswego has been built over nearly 4 decades, beginning with the selection of art for municipal buildings like the public library by community source selection committees. Over time, these community source collection committees coalesced into the Lake Oswego Arts Commission, which is now the Public Art Committee. You couple this with the origination of the 1.5% for Art program in 1993, which is the program whereby 1.5% of the cost of certain capital projects is dedicated to the acquisition of art, and the building of the main fire station in 1995, and art became an even more foundational part of the city. Then, in 1999, 22 years ago, the nonprofit Arts Council of Lake Oswego formed, and ever since has contracted with the city to administer, grow, and curate both the outdoor public collection, the Gallery Without Walls, of which we're all very familiar, and all of the 2D art you see and the collection of 2D art throughout all of the city buildings. The Arts Council of Lake Oswego works to ensure that arts are an integral part in our community now and into the future, with the purpose of placement and preservation of public art in Lake Oswego, providing access to art exhibitions for residents and visitors, and to advance the lifelong learning about the arts through educational programs and events. After many years in the planning and temporary locations around First and B since 2012, the Arts Council has now landed just below where you sit in the art space. The art space opened on May 21st with the exhibition Highlights from the Permanent Collection, and we all invite everyone here to go down and view the art space. The Arts Council is a very vibrant organization with 3 full-time employees and 19 committed volunteer board of director members, including local community leaders, active retirees, and local professionals. That's where we've been. Nicole?
Thanks so much. So I'm going to let you know a little bit about where we are and what we do, and give you a little bit of information about where we're going in the future. So you can see from our slide here, what do we do? We manage all aspects of the public art program, as Andrew said, both the indoor and outdoor collection, and that includes pieces like balanced butterflies, Stainless Stele, which is in 2 photographs in the middle there, and Oswego, which has been amazingly relocated right here on the 3rd floor. We facilitate the Public Art Committee. We administer the People's Choice Vote, which just closed for this year. We plan and program the Gallery Without Walls celebration, which happens in the fall. And we do all kinds of maintenance and conservation. And that's a little bit of what you can see here. So on the, in the 2 middle pictures, we have Stainless Stele by Bruce West. And on the left, you can see that there was a good share of biological growth, which had happened to it over time. And the picture on the right is after it was conserved this last year and really brought back to what it looks like when it's shiny and new. So that's a really beautiful piece that we have in our collection. In addition, we move, deinstall, reinstall inside and out, both at all of the municipal buildings, including City Hall, Adult Community Center, the library, and then we also take care of moving and relocating all of our People's Choice pieces, like Cloud Totem and Going for Your Vision. Going for Your Vision was the piece located down at the Gateway site, which has been taken off display. It's being repowder coated as we speak, so it can get ready for its next part of its life. We make sure all of our pieces are cataloged and documented, and that's what you see there in the middle. Our database that we put together comes to us from the Public Art Archive, and that helps drive not only information that we use internally, but which also drives our app and what you can find online. So our entire collection is available on your phone by texting a code to a 503 number, and that allows you to locate yourself right where you are, what pieces of art are around you, and we can add to that all the time. We put together the Chronicle exhibition, which documents aspects of life in Lake Oswego every year, and there is a purchase from that exhibition which goes into the city's permanent collection. As you all probably know, we present a whole host of exhibitions and programs at ArtSpace. Some of our recent exhibitions include Delta Hill Riders, and those were photographs by Rory Doyle of African-American cowboys and cowgirls from the Mississippi Delta. Those are also some of the Gallery Without Walls pieces that you see at Westlake Fire Station. Zine, The Art of Homemade Resistance, and Gathering Pattern, which is the image you see on the top there. That was a partnership with the Columbia River Basketry Guild, and that was one of the first shows in our space on 41B. Of course, we also have community favorites Art Mart and Holiday Marketplace, which are always attended by many, many people in the community and fan favorites. So throughout the pandemic and now in our recovery phases, we've continued to bring programs to our community by reconfiguring how we do them. So we've had everything from virtual receptions instead of First Fridays, programs and events in conjunction with our exhibitions. You see there we did an interview with the Smith family who started the Delta Hill Riders Group, and we were able to bring people from Mississippi to Lake Oswego without them actually having to travel. We hosted a virtual Gallery Without Walls celebration last year. We held receptions and conversations with our artists from the Basketry Guild, an open house for the Gateway Project, and much more. So our popular drink and draw events that we hold, as you can see in the bottom right there, one of our favorite artists, which Councilor Verdick is a fan of as well, is Labrie Rich, and we got to make these fantastic ornaments, all online. And we also pivoted to put together an online store to be able to support our artists while we weren't necessarily having as many people come in. Art Elevated was our most recent fundraiser, which was held in May of this year, and that helped support operating expenses, offset some ancillary build-out for our gallery downstairs, and support for our virtual programming. Each and every year, our programs grow, morph, and change to meet the needs of our community. So from in-person to online receptions, again, taking our drink and draws to Zoom and bringing people from New Jersey to Colorado to Oregon City, all to Lake Oswego to share their art and lives with us has been really transformative, all while balancing this with the safety of and security of our patrons, volunteers, and staff. So as you can see, up to the minute as to what our current maximum occupancy is, that changes daily. The other images you'll see there are from our virtual Gallery Without Walls celebration, where we interviewed all different of our artists and asked them, really pointed and interesting questions. Why is public art important to them? Why do they participate in the Lake Oswego program? and some of them have been with us for a whole host of years. And so they come back to us year after year because we have a great reputation, we treat our artists well, and it's a beautiful program. We're really excited to build on our solid foundation to continue to bring both positivity and change throughout art to Lake Oswego. So I want to give you just a peek of what is upcoming. Did you know we're doing a gateway sculpture? So what's on the horizon? The installation of the gateway sculpture by Ed Carpenter is coming up. We have dates. It's August 17th. And there will be really exciting road closures during that day. It is the culmination of years of work with dozens of people, community groups, city staff, and departments. This piece will be the first monumental sculpture in the city and a realization of an important part of our public art master plan, further reinforcing Lake Oswego's role not only in public art in the region, but the importance of placemaking as well. Work is ongoing at the site. They've been doing some digging and site prep this week, so you will start that site, see that site even change more in the next few days. What's upcoming here in City Hall is the 1.5% pieces that will be included here at our new building. Those are commission pieces which recognize and celebrate our past, present, and future. So the atrium piece, which will be just outside our doors here, is by celebrated local Indigenous artist Lillian Pitt. And it will include a diversity of materials, glass, copper, metal, and through the shape of a Mobius strip, illustrate the relationship between the land and its occupants. We will also be commissioning a mural, which will be at the corner of 3rd and A, and that will be on the corner of the building. And that's going to be community sourced and responsive piece, really reflective of our times. We are working with community groups including Respond to Racism, LO for Love, our library, Chamber of Commerce, the school district, and more to bring this to life. Lillian Pitt really eloquently stated this in her proposal to us, that her work for City Hall is meant to reflect the land as it was thousands of years ago, to symbolize the many changes to the land over time, and to provide those who enter a sense of connection to a strong community and a place that welcomes them to participate in civic engagement. There are also a number of building projects just through parks, which are upcoming, and they include finishing out Iron Mountain Park, the Recreation and Aquatics Center, the Tennis Center, remodel of Adult Community Center, and Rasique Park and Stevens Meadow. And again, those are all kinds of things that will be fantastic and contribute to our work. We also are working on some community-generated projects and commissions. Again, working with Respond to Racism. They are interested in producing some sort of public art project, so we're working with them on that. And then also with the LO Preservation Society on the Heather Chrisman Memorial. Also, it's time to update the Public Art Master Plan, amazingly. It is already 5 years old, and that is something that we'll be doing as well. We are working diligently to bring fresh new voices, media, perspectives, people, and ideas into all aspects of what we do. This is not an idea that's new or novel on our part, but it is embedded into what we do every day. So we will continue to bring our engaging and responsive exhibitions to ArtSpace, enhance and stretch the reach of our exhibitions and mission, and create accessible and equitable experiences through programming. An interesting statistic from Americans for the Arts Impact of COVID-19 State by State report is that along with 89% of arts nonprofits, ACLO is poised to boost morale and aid in our recovery. There's some other interesting numbers there too. 76% of artists have used their art to raise morale and create community cohesion during the pandemic.
Got music even.
And we've got terrible music.
And so we thank you all for your attention during this. On behalf of the Arts Council and the other 18 board members, I would sincerely invite you to stop by one of our board meetings whenever you may have time throughout the year. Just contact the Arts Council and we can provide you that information.
This is just a short video to let you know how something like Oswego moves effortlessly from one place to the next. So it was fun to see this and document it. Thank you for your time, and
Thank
we'll
you.
entertain any questions.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions?
No question.
Great to have you as neighbors here in the building. It's very exciting, long journey for the Arts Council. Appreciate everything that you're doing, and thank you for putting this presentation together and giving the updates. Doing good work.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is the legislative update. And I welcome Ms. Thiesing forward. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Madison Thiesing, the Assistant to the City Manager. For my presentation this afternoon, I don't have a PowerPoint, I was just going to speak, and I'll just be providing an update to the 2021 legislative session. So I've checked in about every month or so, and we're coming to the close, which a long time coming. So we're aiming for bills to be moving to the floor by the end of this week, and the Constitution requires that the legislature is done by June 27th, which is only 2.5 weeks out. So if bills are not moving out of committee, they're now on their second committee. They either won't move for a vote on the floor, or we'll quickly see an update that they're moving to the floor and getting votes for it. So if they don't move the floor, they just don't become a law and they don't get passed. For us, as our advocating role for the city, our big push lately has been trying to get things out of committee for the floor vote for those that we are supporting. For ones that we're in opposition of, we're asking for no movement essentially, so that it will just end in the committee and not move to a floor session. A few highlights, especially for the ones, the bills that we have talked about so far. So I'll just kind of do a high level of the few that are still in committees that we're really advocating hard right now to get a vote for. That includes Senate Bill 330, which is establishing an income tax credit for the amount of unpaid rent forgiven from a landlord. And that's currently in committee. These bills that I'm going to highlight, we've submitted for letters of support to our delegates, and then wonderfully, the mayor has also offered to reach out to some of our delegates to make sure they're moving to the floor. So that's one of them. Additionally, Senate Bill 582, which is recycling modernization. This has been something that Jenny Schlepplein and I have been really advocating for with Metro, and it's been a whole coalition working to get that moving on. Good news is it had been in the committee and it just got a work session, so I think we're going to be seeing that moving forward to the floor, and it's widely supported throughout the Portland metro area. It really aligns with our sustainability goals, so that's a huge push for us. Moving on, similarly aligning with our sustainability and climate action plan is Senate Bill 784, and that's related to PGE. And so this one's kind of tricky because there's a few bills that are related, and it's not an either or situation, but we'd like to move forward with 784 as well as House Bill 2021. And that's important because both of those are voluntary programs for cities that encourage our green plans that we're moving towards, but it puts us that we can get recovery for our rates, recovery efforts and funding for those projects, but it's not a requirement. And I think that's the biggest thing with a lot of these that we're pushing for is we want to be moving forward with our sustainability goals, but not have it a requirement by the state. Moving on, House Bill 3072, which was the UGB expansion one that we talked quite a bit in last session when we all met. And that one is still in committee. It's not moving forward right now. It doesn't have a work session, which is good news for us. Mayor Beck also had reached out to Salinas to check in on that one. And we're not advocating for one way or another besides letting it sit in committee right now. And then the last one that I wanted to flag was House Bill 3040. And this was the study for the SDC. This was one that we had supported on quite a while ago. It was, I think, 2 months ago. And it's just to have a better understanding of what SDCs are related to affordable housing, and if it's a hindrance, or if there's no difference of having SDCs. And that's something we would just like to have a study for. So we are pushing for that. We're waiting for a vote on it, but we just submitted a letter in support of it. So that's kind of what our focus has been in the last week. For ones that we are watching, but we didn't provide a position on, and these were ones that have come up either in staff meetings or we've talked about as a council. Some have moved forward and been passed into laws, and so I just want to highlight some of those. The first one being House Bill 2344, and that's the labeling of disposable wipes. So requiring that they don't write disposable on flushable wipes, because that's not true, as we know. So that's a huge win for wastewater, our infrastructure. So that's one that's really exciting for our public works folks, for sure. The next one is House Bill 3115, which is related to camping. I think we've had a few questions about that before. That will be moving forward, and it did get passed. It requires cities and counties to review their ordinances to make sure they're aligned with the Martin versus City of Boise Federal Court. Currently, our policy does align with that, but it's at least giving us a year to review it to make sure that we're in compliance. So this is something that I'll be talking with the police chief a little bit more about. I don't have any concerns, the police chief doesn't have concerns, but it's something that we want to make sure we're still in alignment with the Ninth Circuit. Moving on is House Bill 2564, and that's establishing the Willamette Falls Locks Authority as a public corporation. This just got passed and signed in by the governor. So this is a huge win for our coalitions that we're a part of. So this is one that we had been watching. We didn't take an active role. We knew our coalitions that we're a part of were advocating for it. So we just kind of watched by. So this is a big win for us as well. And then the last couple is Senate Bill 493, prevailing wages, that was signed into law. I'm digging in a little deeper to how it's going to impact us, but right now I don't see it. Given we're in the Portland metro area, we have one of the higher prevailing wages, excuse me. Next one is Senate Bill 299, which is the Children's District. That's not moving forward. It was one that we had just been watching, but that's all I can report on that one. And then the last one that I wanted to make note of was House Bill 278, and that is protecting, well, this is kind of a tricky one to explain. So this one is providing guidance on how to distribute rent for those who've applied for rent exceptions through the moratorium. The moratorium is ending the rent moratorium related to COVID-19 is ending on June 30th. And people are still waiting for funds. So this is slowing down that process just so that people aren't going to get evictions while they're waiting for funding that they've already applied for. It's basically giving a pause for about 60 days so the funding catches up to that request by the individual as the moratorium's sunsetting in 2 weeks. And then the last few to note, so those are kind of the bills that we've been watching, and like I said, some are really in favor of what we had been hoping for, but then there's ones that we just need to follow up a little bit closer and understand how it's going to impact us. The last two big buckets that I just need to dig in a little deeper is a handful of police reform and housing bills recently passed. I just haven't had a chance to read through them, chat with our community development as well as our police chief a little bit more about them. So those are things that I'll follow up on and find out how it will impact us more locally. So that's a little snapshot of where we're at. Any questions or follow up on items that weren't yet covered that you had questions on?
Councilor Wendell.
Yeah, could you explain 3115, the camping
Yes.
thing? Because I think there's a lot of confusion. A lot of people are thinking, I've been approached by several people to say, are parks now open for camping?
Yes. So, no, not yes. So the Boise case does not address public spaces in relation to parks. So that is something we are looking into. We have park rules specifically that are in place that says no camping. However, with this passing, we need to make sure that's still in alignment with this new, with House Bill 3115. But currently, Boise's case does not address the parks in the text that is presented today. So that's a part of the review process, just to make sure.
So far, no camping, right?
No camping
Okay,
in parks.
great. Thank you.
Councilor Mans?
I just wanted to thank you for bringing all of this forth. It's so refreshing to have all this information given to us in a snack size.
Thank you.
So thank you for that, and thank you for your help with advocacy on the locks. Much appreciated. Thanks.
Ms. Stevenson, thank you for the report. A quick question on that, House Bill 278, the tenant protections. Is that the funding that landlords are waiting for as part of the program the state had to provide, I think it was like an 80/20?
The tax credit one?
No, not the tax credit, just the funding are they waiting for the funding to go to the landlords so they can then forgive rent to the tenants, or are they waiting, is this some other pot of money that was going directly to tenants?
I believe it's directly to tenants, but let me find out, because I thought it was from the federal to state to federal. But let me look into that, just to confirm. There's a lot of them circulating right now, so
Yes.
let me find out.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for the update, we appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Great.
All done.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have the Recreation and Aquatics Center schematic design update. Welcome to Parks and Rec Director, Mr. Anderholm. Good to have you here. So while Mr. Anderholm is getting set up, just to remind members of the council, he's going to present to us on the work so far of the Project Advisory Committee. Councilor Linn has been sitting as our kind of liaison to that committee, and we appreciate his service there. The committee's come up with several different design options. Mr. Anderholm is here tonight to receive our input on which option we should advance forward.
Okay, cool. Good afternoon, Mayor, City Councilors. Ivan Anderholm, Parks and Recreation Director. I'm here basically to present and bring council up to speed on where the project for the Recreation and Aquatics facility is. Today, I have a number of people that will be joining me on and off up here to help in the presentation and to answer questions of the council and the mayor. The main objectives are to bring you up to speed, but then also to seek input and direction. The project is at a point where we're at the end of schematic design, which means that we have a concept design, we have cost estimates for that concept design, and we've applied an operational plan to that design to show us where we could potentially land. The presentation this afternoon is going to include an overview of the project. It's going to include an overview of our public involvement of the project. We will have a Project Advisory Committee insight into the process in the project. And then we'll move into design concepts and cost estimates, the operational impacts, and then finally, the potential for funding the project. So project overview. As you're all aware, the site is the Municipal golf course. It's located on a major collector, and it's already on property that the city owns. The previous work that has led and fed into the current work that we're doing with Scott Edwards Architecture and our team are the 2018 golf course and community recreation concept and design study from Robert Sherwood Architects. The 2019 and 2020 concept study that was performed by Office Architecture, led by Lake Oswego School District. And then also the 2019 public outreach and prioritization of the park bond dollars. The MOU between the city and the school district spelled out various components of the project: a 25-yard stretch lap pool for competition with spectator seating, a warm water pool, rooms for non-pool activities and exercise, classrooms, offices, a cardio and weight room, and gymnasium. The other objectives and principles behind the project to get us where we're at is we wanted to make sure that we'll use it for at least 30 years. And when I say at least, that's a minimum. We want to serve both pool and non-pool users. It needs to be cost-effective to build and to maintain. The city and the school district will split the $30 million capital investment 50-50. The city and school district will share the operational costs of the pools portion of the facility. We targeted the cost to operate at 30% or 70% operational recovery. It will be adaptable for future uses, so we won't build casework in that is very specific to uses. And it will also operate as a small recreational campus, as we are planning on repurposing the existing golf clubhouse. The redesigned golf course will have an executive 9-hole course, and the driving range will be improved, enlarged with drainage and irrigation. The timeline for this project, where we stand right now, we are at the end of schematic design, where you can see the second bar down is in June, and moving into design development. We're at a crucial point in the project to get direction from both the city council and from the school board to move forward into design development, as this is really when the architects and our team refine the design and the detail of the project. And as you can see, moving along this, we are looking at possible construction starting in spring of 2022 and continuing into spring to fall of 2023. I'll move on to public involvement. And again, I'm going to go through this rather quickly so we can get to the meat of the presentation. Our public involvement goals were to keep the community informed, encourage participation from the community, and in COVID times it was rather interesting in online and inviting to meetings and participating. Solicit regular feedback from our project advisory committee, which was made up of citizens, some representatives from our standing parks, recreation and natural resource advisory board, but also citizens that represented potential user groups. And then build trust by communicating and putting everything transparently on our website, and recordings of meetings, and sharing with the public the process that we were going through. Public involvement activities, and this is from September of last year. We've done 2 different online surveys, a full community meeting, our first neighborhood meeting, completed an online open house. We've had 5 PAC meetings. We've had 2 separate PAC tours of like facilities, and we've also had a focus group meeting specifically with competitive swimmers in the community to understand better their needs. Basic overview of the feedback that we received through the surveys. I won't go through it, I'll touch the high points. The high points are that in the recreational pool focus survey, we did receive over 2,000 responses, which is a quite large response. And you'll see the number one thing there is recreational and lap swimming. People are interested in obviously getting in the pool, but also lap swimming in a pool that's a little bit warmer than the competitive pool. Followed up by swim lessons in various classes. Spa was surprisingly high in our survey. Surprising to me as a future operator, human soup. But then water slide, play structure, and then other activities. The dry recreation, we did not receive the same number of responses, but we did receive just under 750. And really it was about exercise classes, being able to do indoor sports, which in this case requires a large space like a gymnasium, strength and cardio training, and then moving on to classes in our community, meetings, events, and rental space. Feedback of the meetings, and this is where, with a neighborhood and community meeting, there were concerns about the golf course and what the future of the golf course would be. And there were concerns about the competitive pool and making sure that we were reaching out to the competitive swim community and finding out exactly what they needed. And so we have had one and are planning on another meeting with that particular focus group. And then, as with all Parks and Recreation projects and all projects, traffic and parking concerns, we have completed a complete traffic impact analysis that makes recommendations on off-site improvements and the cumulative effect of this project on some of the even further out traffic things that we have, as in the roundabout at Stafford and Rosemont. Also, there were concerns brought up about neighborhood connection concerns and how we were going to do that in a safe way. And you heard earlier with public testimony, there's some concerns about if we make it accessible, will people be looking at neighborhoods as a convenient place to park? And so we do need to do some work on how we would mitigate that. And then lighting and noise. Feedback from the open house, the online open house, with a little over 2,000 visitors and about 300 responses. Site plan concerns, traffic and parking, and you can see through here, direction of the competition pool, golf course, pedestrian safety. So it's pretty much the same. Competitive pool concerns was direction of the swim lanes, which we're addressing through our consultant, Councilman Hunsaker, that specialize in pool design. Lane availability for lap swimming, cost, which we have some information a little bit later today on pool size. And then the recreational pool concerns was really the size, the number of lap lanes, and making sure that there was some separation between the tots and adults that were using the spa. But interestingly enough, we heard over and over again in our PAC meetings that from parents of young children that they're interested in sitting in the spa, but being able to see their children splashing in the pool. So you'll see later when we get into the design that was incorporated. But overall, the recreational pool options, when given a choice of pool options, the pool size was the most important factor, with most, if not all, wanting that pool to be maximized as much as possible. We're not done. We're at schematic design, but we're not done engaging with the public as we refine and move into design development. We have 2 additional community meetings. We'll have neighborhood meetings, focus group. Our project advisory committee will continue to meet. They're also going to be doing site tours, both of our site and others, and then obviously surveys as needed. This time I'd like to call up 2 of our PAC members. Cole Olson is here right behind me. Yep, come on up, Cole. Cole Olson, and I'll kind of scoot to the side here. And then also Sarah Ellison, and then they have a few words about the insight of the project from the PAC's perspective, the citizen perspective.
Hello, thank you for having me. So I'm Cole Olson. My wife and I have lived in Lake Oswego since 2007. We currently live off Oak Meadow Court, just across the street from the project site off Burgess. So we were heavily interested in the project success. I just wanted to make a couple quick points about my experience on the PAC. Number one, I think if you go back to the formation of the committee, I thought the program team did a very nice job getting a cross-section of community interests. We had folks like me who have small children, and we had that perspective. I think we had folks that brought the older demographic interest to the table, as well as the younger demographic, sports enthusiasts, the coach. So I thought that made for a very enriching discussion about the different options and where we wanted to go. Although over Zoom, I felt the committee meetings were really engaged, and we had a lot of debate with that diversity over the different options and where we should go. So I thought that was a success. That was my first point. Secondarily, I thought that the PAC was a valued member of the design team. I never felt like they were checking a box or they were just listening to us and moving in a different direction. I always felt like our input was incorporated into the design as it developed. One example being the recreation pool, which is a very hot topic for the PAC and from the community involvement that was presented. You'll see the options tonight on where we've landed to date. That's a central focus point of the different options. And just overall, the community involvement I thought was very good through the PAC. I think we fulfilled that mission of bringing the community interests into the design. And I thought that we were treated as a valuable member of the program. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Ellison. For those of you I haven't met yet, I'm one of the 3 Parks Board members who are serving on the PAC. I also serve as co-chair of the Parks Board. Staff asked us to share about our involvement on the LORAC PAC. As a PAC member, I've attended the 5 PAC meetings held since the start of this year. In addition to the PAC meetings, we've had the opportunity to participate in a variety of community outreach activities. I attended a LORAC meeting with competition pool stakeholders, a LORAC community meeting held in February, and I attended tours of the Chileum Aquatic and Fitness Center in Newburgh and Southwest Community Center in Portland. Other tour participants and myself provided the entire PAC with reports of each tour. PAC members also had the opportunity to review the rec pool survey results and the dry rec survey results. It's my impression that the LORAC design team has modified its design options over time in response to input from the PAC, like Cole said. One of the recurring conversations that I've heard at PAC meetings has centered on the size and capacity of the rec pool. During our tour of the Southwest Community Center, we were informed that pool users can experience wait times of up to an hour to use the pool during peak times because their pool's at capacity. Some PAC members, including myself, were concerned to hear that. And after hearing these concerns, the design team came back with modified plans, and you'll see a larger pool size in one of the design options presented today. At the most recent PAC meeting, PAC members were asked to participate in a straw poll to gauge preference for the 3 different design options offered by the design team. There was no support for option 2, which features a reduced floor plan and no gymnasium. Myself and other PAC members raised concerns that this option would not serve the needs of the community, nor would it meet the expectations of our community members that they have for a rec and aquatics facility. The majority of PAC members, including myself, expressed a preference for option 3, which features an expanded rec pool and expanded dry side rec, including group fitness space and weights cardio. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you both so much. Thank you for your service on the PAC as well.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Cole. Thank you. So moving forward on with our presentation here, we're going to move into design options. So at this time, I'd like to invite Jennifer Marshak up from Scott Edwards Architects, and she's going to go through the designs.
All right. Hi, I'm Jennifer Marshak with Scott Edwards Architecture. So Sarah, I think, set that up pretty good too, talking about the 3 options. I hope you all had a chance to look at them, but I think we're going to start out with the site plan first, maybe.
There
it is. So yeah, you can see how it sits kind of on that corner of the site. The area that we're looking at, we've divided off from the golf course is about 7.5 acres, 7.1 is shown on here. Looking at roadway improvements along Stafford Road, so an improved public use path, landscaping, and public utility easement off of Stafford before you get to the parking. There's 174 spaces currently targeted. And then you can see the building, and this footprint I think is based on the option 1, so it's just about just over 57,000 square feet. It sits on the site kind of at a high point, a high flat point. It's utilizing an area to minimize kind of cut and fill on the site, take advantage of some of the natural topography. You also see that off to the side, new golf maintenance yard and golf building, which is part of the adjacent project. And then moving on to a more detailed portion of the options. Option 1, on the right-hand side, you can see as you enter the building, you're confronted with a lobby and staff areas.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Computers.
Staff
There
areas
you go.
for 20 employees, the gymnasium, multi-purpose fitness spaces, weights and cardio, sort of the dry side fitness as you move down the hallway to the locker rooms, some event rental spaces, family changing rooms before you get to the recreation pool. So those are all connected with a hallway, ability to see through the building to the pools, all the way through to the golf course on the opposite end. And competition pool, we've talked about a little bit, the 25-yard stretch, 9 lanes, spectator seating for about 300. And then finally, at the very top of the screen, you'll see sort of the mechanical and service spaces of the building. And then option 2, this option we looked at knowing that we were gonna have some budget issues. So this is looking at pulling that gym space away. The idea here being that you could construct it again at a later phase, but this removes the gymnasium and that multi-purpose group fitness space. Everything else essentially the same. And then moving to the third option, which Sarah referred to, this is that larger option, which just kind of increases both the dry side and the wet side. So the recreation pool increases by about 1,000 square feet. So it's 4,000 instead of 3,000 in the previous versions. That allows you to have some additional lane space, additional instructional swimming space, some more amenities. That spa up at the top as you enter exit the locker rooms. We also increased the multi-purpose group fitness space as well as weights and cardio. And so those were all also based on information we received from our consultant Ballard King, who I think Ivan will get into with the operations side of it. And then we have just a few visuals, 3D images of the building as it sits on the site. This from the northeast, you can see the clubhouse separated from the new building with a new open space that will knit the two together. And then down from the south, looking out at the competition pool. And then finally from the golf course side.
And then Jennifer
And
did.
then the cost estimate.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem. And I don't think I can read it from here, Adam, and I don't know if you can read it.
Yeah, I can. Hold on just 1 second. Sorry about that.
No.
So the cost estimate for the 3 options, as we moved into the 3 options, we worked with a third-party cost estimator, JLD Cost Consulting. And what they did is took the schematic design that SEA created and then worked that through a cost estimating process. And in that cost estimating process, where they ended up on the different facilities is they did initially option 1, which was the balance facility that had all of the components that were in the MOU as their baseline. So in that baseline analysis, they went and they looked at all aspects of it. The target for construction budget for the project was $24 million. That cost estimate came in at $27,805,000. Option 2, which was the option that we had reduced some of the spaces and was really in alignment with the work that OPSIS had done with the school district previously, with the possibility of maybe adding a gymnasium and another space at a later date on the site. OPSIS had done a cost estimate and saw that right around $30 million. However, when we did the cost estimate with the change in the environment, in the contracting environment, the cost estimate for the hard costs on that actually came in at $26,471,000, so a little over $2.5 million over the $24 million target. And then option 3, we also had those numbers done, and when that came through, it came through at $29,705,000. So what we have is being able to meet the space requirements of the MOU, but we were not able to meet the cost of the total $30 million project cost. I will say, and Jennifer can speak and answer some questions about this after we get done with our presentation, but I will say that from the beginning of this project, we have asked SEA, and SEA has applied the most efficient and effective way to construct the building, both in the large spaces and the small spaces. So this is not an extravagantly built building. It's not a building. It is a building that's meant to be functional, aesthetically pleasing, without being over the top, but very functional and long-lasting. So in the end, when you add soft costs to the projected costs, and you have this in your packet, we're looking at a cost range between $32,965,000 upwards to $38,846,000 or $36,846,000.
Save $2 million right there.
Yep, save right there, just by me reading it wrong and not being able to see it with my fogged up glasses. So Jennifer is going to be available for questions when we get done at the Q&A. I want to go into the operational impacts, because another important portion of this project was not only looking at what the capital costs are and making sure that design reflected what the public was expecting out of the project, but also looking at the analysis. We went into it with some assumptions. Obviously, the assumptions that are in the operational plan were that we would be open to the public late 2023, early 2024. That is at the end of the projected schedule, assuming that it would take as long for us to do it. The center would be operated by the city. Lake Oswego School District would be the primary and prioritized user of the competitive pool, and they would have a financial contribution that actually is not included in the analysis. And it's not included in the analysis because we don't know what it is, because it's still being worked out through our IGA negotiations with the district. So when we're looking at these numbers, keep in mind that this does not take into account a contribution towards operating the pools. The operational plan is based on the schematic facility that SEA presented. Also, $15 an hour in July of 2023 is expected. One of the big things, which is a difference from the way that the school district pool and some pools have been operated, is that it will be guarded at all times by city lifeguards. And that's actually a state regulation change that has recently happened. Obviously, the use of competitive swim teams, clubs, all of that is included in this. The golf course operations are not included, so this is just the facility. This does not include golf. We will be operating golf out of the front desk. The center will be open, based in this assumption, 99 hours per week. And then we use a multiplier of a 25% surcharge for non-residents to come up with numbers. The budget summary for operational budget, you'll see in option 1, the percentage of recovery is about 68%. It's about 826,000 is what the deficit would be. When you move to option 2, your recovery rate drops down to 52%, and it's over $1 million a year. And then when you look at option 3, your percentage increases to 74%, and is still at about $740,000 a year. The interesting thing about these numbers and the revenue is that a major portion of our revenue generation is going to be off of memberships. But before I get into that, I want to get into staffing. So with a facility in the neighborhood of 47,000 square feet to 60,000, which is the range from option 2 being the smallest and option 3 being the largest, it will require some FTE and full-time staff. So in these projections, options 1 and 3 have 6 full-time staff, and option 2 has 5 full-time staff. Part-time staff, which is another major driver of this, is when you look at that, and I thought that it was important for council to understand, that this is a fairly large operation with the equivalent of anywhere between 27 and 33 FTE, full-time equivalencies, on part-time staff to operate both the recreational aquatics. I also want to point out on this that you'll see that the majority, almost the majority of the budget expenditures for part-time staff is in the aquatics area. And that's because it is state regulated by the health department. It requires 1 lifeguard on deck per 40 people in the pools. And then there's an alternative method that we'll look at as we fine tune this. Revenue, you can't read this, and I know you can't read it. It's included in your packet. But I'm going to talk about the different pockets of revenue. This pocket right here are the 3 options in the analysis that we did based on membership. The membership percentages of the immediate market, and we use the school district boundaries as our immediate market, go from option 2, which is at about 5.6% of the immediate market buying a membership, to about 9% on option 3, with option 1 being about 7%. Those numbers are fairly conservative in this type of business, and based on a market analysis that Ballard King and Associates did. The other, another bucket, and this one's even smaller, I'm glad I'm showing it because it looks like art. Come on, it looks like art. Another bucket is our general programs. So when we have programs that take place in the facility that are utilizing spaces, we obviously generate revenue from those. So membership, general programs, we have aquatic programs, which are a separate thing. So this is swim lessons, exercise classes, things that take place in the aquatic programs. And then the last area that we look at is rentals. And this is rentals of any of the spaces, including lane lines, any of the rooms themselves. And primarily, the biggest area is really the aquatic rentals, where we're renting lane lines to both the swim clubs and then full pools to the water polo programs that aren't associated with the school district. So we're over budget to get all of the components. And it's not an enviable position to be in. I'll admit that. We were hopeful that we'd be able to at least have one option. But I do want to touch on the potential funding and how these 3 options, or 2 of these options, or 1 of these options, if council so made the choice to, but to give you some options on potential funding. So I have another spreadsheet, which you've all seen before because this was presented to you when Parks Board came forward. It's a big spreadsheet, but for these purposes, I made it a little bit bigger so we can actually read it. So of the projects that were on the prioritized list from the Parks Board as recommendations to the council, projects that have been initiated and approved to be initiated by council are reflected in this spreadsheet. So essentially what you have is the ACC remodel, the tennis center, the park upgrades in the parks, the LORAC building, which is the recreation aquatics, the golf course, and then the RESEEK project. What you'll see there is I totaled what the total cost is, what is coming from bonds. So right now we have committed $24.3 million of the $30 million in bond dollars. We've committed $1 million in general fund, which is actually included in the parks budget as part of our beginning balance that's dedicated to the recreation center. And we committed, to come up with our $15 million, we committed $3 million of SDC toward that building. And then on the other, the ACC is endowment funds that we are investing in that project. The $200,000 on the tennis center is actually cash within their enterprise fund. And then the $15 million obviously is the school district contribution. Other priority projects based on the Parks Board's priorities were the acquisition and trails, which there's one project, Howland and Woods, which is in that. The other projects have not been defined. However, we are working toward completion of the Willamette Greenway, so I'll say that probably falls into that category. And then the other was initially the parking and access, which would be a new safe access and centralized parking in accordance with the Lusher Area Master Plan at Lusher Farm. So those totals are reflected here. Under the total projects, that reflects bonds, and again, the acquisition trails and the Lusher parking and access we have not come to council and gotten official authorization for, brings our bond investment to a total of $26,800,000. General fund remains the same. SDC increases by $500,000 because of acquisition and trail eligibility. And then our fund balances, the next line there is what we actually have. So though we passed a bond for $30 million, Sean Cross and I sat down and met, and with premiums on the bonds that we sold because of our outstanding bond rating, we actually but we earned an additional $1.2 million. So really in our bonds, we have 31.2. The general fund, in that fund balance, is, council will remember in the current budget that was passed, there was a $1.8 million in capital reserves. So that the 2.8 includes that. And then in the SDCs, the 6.9 million is the amount that we actually have in current SDCs. So it's substantially more. So the difference that you see there on the third line is really combining what's not committed from bonds, what is available in the general fund in the capital reserve, and then what would be available in SDC funds, which brings a total of $9.6 million. There are 3 other projects that were listed by the Parks Board when they made their recommendation. These were the 3 that fell in the highlighted area that were not of higher priority, they were lower priority. And I believe that when it was presented to council, the board presented it as, we want to make sure that we get everything above this line done. And then if we can do these would be the next 3 projects. So when you take those into account, and those are all bond-funded projects, with the exception of Tryon Cove, there's a potential of share with Metro. That's an additional $4.3 million, which brings the available dollars between general fund, bond, and SDCs to right at $5.3 million. So to effectively answer the question of what projects would be affected should council make the decision to move forward with one of these projects, under options 1 and options 2, probably none. If in fact these, in the Tryon Cove and the Lusher Ag and Ed haven't been completely, they're kind of placeholders, so we don't know what the costs are on those, but we wanted to put placeholders in place. And under option 3, 1 or possibly 2 of these projects would be affected. That concludes my presentation, and myself and Jennifer and anybody else involved in the project, which we also have Tony Vandenberg from the school district is here. And we also have Bruce Powers, our department project manager.
Mr. Branham, can you go back 2 slides, please? Okay, can you just walk us through this? So if we have this 3.4 in the SDCs, that's unallocated SDC funding?
Yes.
And how much SDC funding can this project use?
It can use up to 20% of the total cost of the project. So at 20% of the 36 million, I believe it's about 7.2.
And how much do we have allocated at SDC right now?
3 million.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
to come up to our 15. We had 1 million in general, 11 in bonds, and 3 in SDCs.
So, but if we know the SDC funds are already spoken for, so are we looking at just removing bond projects, or also looking at reallocating some of the SDC funded?
Well, right now, for the SDC on our CIP projects, these are the projects that they're kind of allocated to. We have an abundance of SDCs that we don't have allocated across projects. Most of our projects are included in this bond list.
Well, is it possible to use more SDC funding and fund more of the bond projects? Maybe even the three lower priorities, even if with option 3?
Yeah. Yes, I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was.
I have a question. Well, yeah.
The math problem is, with the SDCs, the question that you're answering, we can come back to you on that, is we have a project list that was adopted with our SDC methodology that outlines the projects that are eligible for SDC and what percentage of share certain projects are eligible. There are some that are 100% because they're 100% capacity building, and there are others that are only partially. But that is also a list that's been adopted by council, so we could do some analysis of that and bring back some information for you on that.
So for the operation, the folks that will work at the facility, are these just all new folks, or is there any efficiency to the fact that we already operate recreational programs?
Yes, there is. So what we've done is we've identified through this operational plan, the operational plan of the facility if it was a facility in and of itself.
Okay.
And what I should have prefaced this with is that operation plan is at the schematic level as well as the design is. That will go through revision. I can tell you right now that there's probably some revision in a couple of the full-time positions because we already either have part-time or a full-time position that could slot into one of those positions where we would reduce that. We haven't done that reduction yet because we wanted this operational plan to match up with the level of certainty that the schematic capital plan, the construction plan was. But the operation plan will continue to go through revisions as well.
And
So why option 3 and option 1, the full-time personnel cost are exactly the same, but option 2 is substantially less? And then why the big fluctuations, I guess?
The fluctuation is in option 2. You don't have basically the fitness and exercise component because you're eliminating sports, you're eliminating the gymnasium, and you're eliminating the exercise room, the exercise classroom. So in that, essentially to program the cardio weight room, we wouldn't need to hire a full-time staff. We would just have a full-time staff supervise part-time attendance to that space.
Okay, and we recover those costs?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess that's the one thing I noticed, option 3 has the highest cost recovery of all the options.
It is the highest cost overall for operating for the pool portion of it.
Okay.
And that's because, again, our number one cost with any business is going to be staffing, and because it is a heavily regulated staffing plan that we have to have that's approved by the state, we do have to have personnel there. So whenever you add aquatics, if you add more space, you're going to add more, you're going to get a higher percentage of return, but you're going to also have a higher subsidy.
Okay. And on the revenue side, do the numbers factor in, sliding scale rates, discounts for folks that can't afford the full?
So the way that we handle scholarships in the department currently, and we would look to continue, is we actually have a separate mechanism for raising revenue for scholarships specifically, and it goes into a scholarship fund. Right. And so when somebody comes in and applies for a scholarship and they qualify for a scholarship, we actually fund the entire registration to the revenue account, but we transfer money out of our scholarship account. So If it's a $50 class and you qualify for $25, the person would pay $25, and then we would actually transfer $25 from our scholarship fund into that, and then that goes into the revenue for the particular class.
Okay. And then my final question, because I know lots of questions, probably a lot of us have the same questions, but when we look at the construction costs, to what resiliency standard and what sustainability standards is the building being contemplated?
Jennifer can answer this better than I.
So the base numbers are to base building code levels, but if you look in that detail of the cost estimate spreadsheet, there is a number to bring it up to level 4, so immediate occupancy, resiliency for the dry side recreation, and I think that ad was $75K in the spreadsheet.
Okay.
And we are not currently targeting any LEED or green building official standards, but we are working with the ETO and have pre-enrolled in a number of their programs and are targeting at least 10% better than energy code overall for the project. And we'll also, of course, have the 1.5% green energy technology, so that will be at least solar, some kind of solar, probably, or renewable energy in some aspect.
Is the code isn't LEED Gold kind of the base building code?
Parts of it. Our Oregon Energy Code is very close to that. So already in Oregon, we start off pretty far
Right.
down the road, which is great. So.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Mance?
Thank you, great presentation. Whoops,
Mike.
let me turn this on. Right now. I have a couple of questions. For example, you have on the add-ons, the undergrounding of the wires on Stafford. Is that a must-do?
Hopefully not.
It is and it isn't. So under our code, it's required that we underground utilities.
Right.
In this particular case, though, we haven't there hasn't been a decision made as to if we will have to. We will be asking for a variance of that because we have gotten confirmation from PGE that their poles that are along Stafford will not come down because of the transmission lines that are at the top of them. So we're going to have that conversation, and we wanted to be completely transparent that depending on what degree of undergrounding we're required to do, then there may be additional costs that are associated with the undergrounding. But it will not be completely removing the power poles or the above ground lines.
And that appears to be 500,000. Is that what I'm seeing here? Yeah.
At this level, yes.
At this level?
Yes.
If we don't get the variance, or you don't get the variance on that. Okay, that was one question. I have an additional question. In looking at the revenue and our yearly passes, our monthly passes, et cetera, what percentage, do you have any idea what percentage might be seniors, youth, households? I looked for that in here, and it may be in here, and I apologize if I missed it.
I don't.
Let me see. Yes, there is.
Have it right here.
Well, yeah, there's a rate, but not the.
Is there something there? I don't think so.
We did factor, there is a factor in there for those. So it is spread across the board with family memberships being the highest. I don't have the exact numbers, but it is in the full operational plan, and I can get those numbers and send those out to you.
The only reason I bring that up is my personal knowledge of a program called Silver and Fit that allows, or the insurance company pays, Medicare pays, for example. Would we be looking into something like that to help subsidize? We want to avoid that.
No, actually, we will be looking into those programs.
Okay, great.
And as part of the next revision of our operational plan and in our assumptions, I believe that there was a question by Councilor Burdick about this, about future partnerships. Those are the types of future partnerships that as we develop the operational plan, we'll explore. Because there are a number of those, not only for seniors, but then there are also incentive programs through insurance companies and other things that we can qualify for
Okay.
as a facility.
Yeah, I sort of jumped ahead to the pool being built on that one.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation.
Thanks, Councilman. Councilor Wendland?
You know what, I'm going. Can I yield my time to Councilor Wynn first? Because I just have some, I'll talk
Everyone
last.
wants to,
Is
yeah.
everyone going to
Okay,
talk?
we'll have you go last.
I'll go last.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for that very informative presentation. I think that we appreciate Councilor Wendland's liaison, but certainly having this is very very helpful, because I think that having it broken down to 3 options is great. My question really has to do with operational costs. I know that the IGA is still yet to be finalized with the school district, but I assume that the operational costs that the school district will be sharing will be strictly only for the pool, nothing else, right? Are they gonna contribute to other parts of the building?
Well,
like utilities, for example.
We're looking at each other because the truth is we're still in the process of negotiating with the district. So I think the question is, how do we make sure that the distribution between the 2 entities is fair?
Right.
I also think the issue will be related to how many hours and how much dedication of the competition pool the district wants. So we don't actually have an answer for you right now because we're still working with the district, and there's different ways we could go about that. But I think that so far the negotiation's been very positive, very productive. I'm not worried about our ability to get there. I just don't necessarily want to tell you today what the methodology is going to be, because the truth is I don't.
Okay.
actually
I'd just
know.
like to see us, certainly from the city standpoint, advocate for costs that may not directly be just, simply the chemicals for the pool, the water, for example, but other auxiliary things such as the maintenance of the parking lot and things like that, that would, although they may not be directly related to the operation of the pool, would not be, they're absolutely necessary for the even pool to be able to, for people to come to and drop their kids off, and for students to come as well. The other question I have would, again, also relate to operational costs too. I assume that the, that we're paying everybody minimum wage that works here to staff it. If that's the case, then is it really $15 an hour? But certainly you're also calculating the employer portion of payroll burden, the taxes and such, right?
Yes, in the operational plan, we used 15 as the base rate because we're anticipating 15 is going to be in 2023, July of 2023. That's what the wage will be. There's various wages that go from 15 on up, depending on the level of responsibility that the employee has. You have your basic lifeguard, then you have an instructor, you have a lead lifeguard. So there are various. We did factor in that. We did also factor in. We used a percentage on the part-time for benefits and employer costs. We just used a blanket percentage on that. The full-time positions were actually generated directly off of our compensation plan and using our benefit calculation that our finance department uses. So those are basically mid-range with full boat of benefits.
And lastly, one thing about construction costs. Certainly in your calculation, you're assuming the elevated, inflated construction costs that we're dealing with right now, right, in this environment. Is there any indication that, by the time we get to construction in late 2022, that there's going to be a reprieve from these inflated costs? Do you have any insight on that? Or is that, or shall we just assume that it's going to?
That is a tough one, yeah. But we are basing it on the conditions right now, and obviously hoping that they will improve. We do think, both ourselves and our cost estimator, that there is some anomaly right now happening, and hopefully we have a better situation when we get to the construction.
Concrete and steel.
And to further add a little detail to your question, Councilor Wynn, is in the cost estimate, the full document, if you look at that too, because we're at the schematic level, there is a healthy design contingency that we have built in also into that, as well as a very healthy escalator to beginning or bid time of the project. So, but we are using what the current market is showing and then what the current market is trending. there are some indicators, and actually Tony Vandenberg is a very valuable member of our team with the school district because he runs all of their capital programs, and he is really on top of what's trending right now. And so we're using him as well as the district is adding value to this project because they have so many projects that are online right now and looking at new projects.
I know that a lot of us had some heartache with coming back several times to increase the guaranteed maximum pricing and such, so we want to kind of be in.
Less heartbreak.
Yes, let's just avoid the heartburn.
Councilor Rapp?
Thank you, Mayor. Ivan, thank you very much for this. This is a great report, and I appreciate you being conservative. I think I've not really any questions, more of a argument for option 3. I think that your team did a great job of canvassing the community for what our community wants, and it looks like a significant amount of people came out with opinions, and as we know, those opinions can be diverse and scattered, and you've done a great job of pulling them all together for 3 great options. Looking at the numbers, you know, as the resident financial nerd who's always harping on spending, where I always net out is if we're going to spend the money, let's make sure we get the value for it, right? So it doesn't make any sense to spend money and not serve the needs of the community or get a lot for that money. And what I've noticed with a few simple calculations is with option 3, it's actually one of the most cost efficient and most value efficient method for us. While we're getting a bigger pool, a bigger weight cardio room, bigger space, and yes, it's going to cost us about $7 million more. It's really only $7 a square foot more than option number 1. And as a parent with small kids who lived in this community, we would, when my wife or I were staying home with the kids, when it's raining outside, as it does here 9 months out of the year, and you're kind of pulling your hair out, trying to figure out something to do with your kids, we would go to the Southwest Community Center over on Gabriel Park, which has an amazing pool. And one of the things you notice is it's a great facility and has a lot of space. When it's packed, when it's super rainy outside and the weather is not cooperating, it gets even busier. So it's a very strong argument to have adequate space of a pool for our families. I would also like to argue that Lake Oswego is a very active community. We have a lot of sports, we have a lot of swimming programs, a lot of active members of all ages, and they deserve a place to work out very close to their homes that's affordable and a great place to be with their friends. So while, yes, we're spending more money on this, we can find the money, we can make it happen, and it's the best value for that spend. So I would urge the rest of our counselors to approve option 3 to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rapp. Councilor Wu?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Evan. And I think I am not an expert on pool. I would love to have a bigger pool, like bigger facility. My question is not about that. It's about the payment. Like in our community, not certainly everyone will be able to pay $937. Is there an option for those families, like, and how it would work? That's my first question. The other question is, concerned citizens have been talking about the parking, the traffic, and all that. I think we owe it to them to explain, because we have the gentleman over there, Mr. Wayne, who voiced something, and I've read a lot of things that he wrote about this. Is there a response to those concerned citizens? And also I know that the PAC, most of the response, the citizens have been talking about traffic, about how it will impact their neighborhood. Even though I've always supported this project, I would like us to make sure, you know, their concerns are taken into account. The last one I want to say was, like, how do we come from $30 million to $38 million, and $38 million, and even though the SDC, all this will help, there's a lot of project we have, and that's a project that we work very like Safe Route to School, and this is all about with parks and recreation. Is this raise in the budget will impact those projects that the City Council had as goals?
Okay.
Are they gonna be impacted if we raise the budget from 30 million to $38 million? 36. Yeah, 38, let's be realistic. Yeah, but yeah, so that's it. Thank you.
Councilor Mabuk, to answer your first question on the affordability, our goal is to, number one, set the rates so that they're a rate that is accessible. However, we do understand that some people can't fully access it, and that's where we come in with our scholarship program that is very healthy, and like I explained earlier, people can apply for that scholarship. We use a sliding scale that's very similar to how school districts determine financial aid for meals and things like that. So we actually borrowed that directly from district. So we will continue to address and work on the neighborhood concerns that deal with both traffic and parking. We have our initial traffic impact analysis, which talks about how many trips we're going to be generating and that, but we are also committed to having a dialogue with our neighbors about smart design, and then also making sure that we accommodate in people will take the most convenient route, and that's kind of a principle of getting people to a facility. So we just need to make sure that in our design that we're smart about how it's easy to drop people off at the facility. But by no means are we saying, no, we're gonna move forward with the project and not have that conversation with our neighbors. It's very important to us. I think that in the long run with the improved golf course and pedestrian connectivity, I think it's gonna be a way to enhance their neighborhood's access, pedestrian access, not just to this facility, but beyond this facility to the greater Lusher Farm, Stevens Meadow, and all of the properties that the city has, the recreational facilities. And then your last question on the cost escalation. Cost escalation is really, I don't want to say that it wasn't our factor, but we did everything we could to keep the design of this to be efficient and effective. And we asked SEA to do that. So they did an enormous amount of research and vacillated when you get into the details of the design. You know, we have a portion of the building that's a pre-engineered metal structure, which is the natatorium over the pools. Originally, we thought, well, gymnasium is going to be cheaper that way. They actually did the research on the market and where the market was trending and found that actually a wood-built structure would be less expensive. So they looked at all those efficiencies. I think that what we ran into is kind of an anomaly in the market right now in COVID times, where we're seeing some volatility, and dependent on the time that our cost estimator pulls that information, it's going to reflect what's happening truly, and then trying to project from that based on the immediate past history. And so you're going to see that. And we knew going into this project, based on the work, even going into the MOU that OPSIS had done, that we were looking at a facility that, you know, the option 2 was going to be right on the borderline of making the $30 million. So, you know, we came in, the surprising thing, and I think Councilor Raff said this the best, is that the differential, though, between 1 and 3, or even 1 and 2, is significantly less than we were anticipating. So, you know, we were expecting a broader. It just unfortunately that, you know, even with that option 2, we were not able to meet the 30 million, just because of where the market is currently and the numbers that we have to use.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Burdick.
Thank you, Ms. Counselor Mboop actually asked a number of my questions, but we have right now, I guess, about 174 parking spaces for both the golf course and the rec center. Do we have any idea of like what do we expect in terms of the events going on? Is that enough? Are we going to have spillover into the neighborhoods? You know, I know it might depend on events, but any information, I think that might be helpful for some of the neighbors, and maybe hopefully it's enough for the majority of the time and help put them at ease a little bit, at least in terms of parking.
You want to talk about the traffic study?
Sure. Sure, yeah. So we did, and we have actually tried to increase the amount of parking based on some of those studies that we've had done to try to accommodate as much as we can on site. But even those studies, if you read them, acknowledge that the larger events will have some spillover. So we're also looking at the surrounding areas. So the school district site, can you drop people off, park buses over there? Can you shuttle people back and forth? There's also a church site that the property uses for parking, and then also Azalea Field. So those bigger events will need a plan in place, and that's kind of some of what Ivan was talking about, working with the neighbors. That all hasn't been worked out, but we acknowledge that is the case. So regular events will be accommodated, regular use and events will be accommodated on site completely.
Okay. And Ivan, do we have an idea of like how often are we going to have those large events, or like, I mean, I know all this is really conceptual at the moment.
So large swim events, they're between the swim club and the two high schools. We're looking at probably in the neighborhood of 18 events a year. And then we'll also have water polo matches, which don't have the same demand. It's not multiple teams. A good example of how we manage that currently in cooperation with the district is during home Lake Ridge football games. We actually schedule and block out the schedule for Azalea Field during those games so that people that are attending the Lake Ridge games actually have additional parking. So we have had conversations going through Tony, who's on our design team, about during large swim meets that generally take place on weekends when school's not in session, or if they're school related, it's after school hours, of actually working with buses being parked over there, but also talking to the school district. We can work on our scheduling with Azalea Field, and then we do have 2 agreements with 2 churches that are in the local area that have large parking lots that allow us to use those for events that have happened at Lusher or at Azalea.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Winland.
Well, I think these are great questions, and there are many of the same questions that we had as far as the PAC. I just wanted to, first of all, thank the PAC who did an exceptional job. I've been on many, many committees in Lake Oswego, and I tell you, we have the A-team assembled because it had every subgroup of swimming and activities and whatever involved between Ivan's leadership and Bruce and Tony Vandenberg from the school district, who brings incredible knowledge about building and putting things together. And then obviously Jennifer and her whole team. Every Zoom call we had with the PAC, there was at least 5 or 6 of you from your firm collecting information and working on things. So I just want to say, along with Ballard, which is our swim group advisors, we have really assembled, I would say, A+ information to make a decision. And I also want to say that the PAC struggled many times with, okay, do you go a little bigger? Do you not go bigger? But I think we had in the back of our minds, how can we best serve, to Councilor Rapp's comment, the citizens of Lake Oswego, so that we're not in a situation where we have underbuilt and regret for the next 30 or 40 years, because it's the dig once, build once is really critical in pools. So you want to do it right. The other thing is the expansion levels that we looked at between the two, between A and C, were really revenue areas. Not only was it to give our citizens a little bit more work out area or more swim area. But one of, I think, the best parts of this is that those are revenue areas which help take the deficit down. And in our conversations with the school district from the very beginning, we were looking pretty much at a 50-50 split on expenses, and they've been spending that amount of money, and some of this will be new money for the city, but also we're obviously providing a wonderful service. I think from the, a couple things that I wanted to point out about the pool, and for those of you who don't know, I was on the school board for 8 years, and we've been talking about the pool for 15. And this has been a subject that's been going on for a long time. The pool has a divider in it that can make 2 pools. So Lake Ridge and Lake Oswego will both have individual space to work out in, which is a big part with both water polo and swimming. The other part is in the multi-purpose room under option 3, we can divide that so we can have 2 different sets. So again, it's looking at more revenue, more ways to make the dollars work out, and also provide more services. And then the last part of the synergy between this building and then the golf course and then the golf course clubhouse has additional revenue opportunities that we have. In fact, we could even throw weddings because we'll have facilities if people want to start using it for that facility for those reasons. But there's lots of different ways to be a magnet for activity for Lake Oswego residents. And I think we're going to have a hub. And the last part I wanted to say is hubs bring traffic, and I totally understand that part. We did have a traffic engineer that we have as a consultant that unfortunately, his was always the shortest presentation because everybody wanted to talk about the fun stuff. But the traffic, he really did bring in a lot of great points of capacity of our existing artilleries, Stafford and so on. The counts that they have are within the ranges with the addition of the facility, well within the ranges that they will take the additional capacity. Are we going to have traffic issues? Yes, but I think we can work them out. And I think to Ivan's point, we do have to have a good plan in place. So I'm totally in support of option 3, build once and keep expenses as low as we can. And I would just like to thank the whole team for all their work. I know both Cole and Sarah gave great testimony tonight. And that was after hours and hours of sitting on Zoom calls discussing. And we really thought this through. And so I'm very proud of our group. I'm very excited that we had a great team to help make this decision. So anyway, build it, and I will be so happy when it's built. I mean, it's been a long time that we've been talking, and this will be actually a concrete example of working together.
Yeah.
And this is the first and only time, really, that we've had a building together with the school district. And I want to say that our relationship has not always been wonderful between the city and the school district, and with Martha coming on board and Laura de la Cruz, who has left, but Jennifer Shealy is going to be a wonderful partner in it. And I think it's giving us an opportunity to tell the taxpayers that you write a check, we deal with it, and we're going to deal with it in the most efficient and best ways that you can. So anyway, I'm in support, and I really appreciate everything that Ivan's done and the whole team. This is a big project, but it's a good project.
So show of hands, who is in favor of the option 3? Well, okay. Half hand. Okay, is it appropriate then to come back kind of with those funding options to make up the gap, bond, SDC?
Yeah, I think what we ought to do is we ought to bring back the funding plan for option 3 at the next council meeting. Does that sound okay with you?
Okay.
Absolutely.
But if that's where we're headed, we'll just let you know how, as I said before, how we'll do the math.
Would be good to have, if necessary, to input from Parks Board if we're making decisions on SDC funded projects, bond funded projects. we'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay.
It is on their
thank you.
agenda for tomorrow to discuss.
Oh, on their agenda, okay. Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you to everyone on the PAC. Council Wynn, thanks for being our liaison. I know this is a long time in the works, and it's great working with the school district, our, partnerships, just like on the water treatment with this, city of Tigard, and now with other taxing jurisdiction there in the school district. These partnerships work really well and provide a lot of benefit to council at this point, so it's exciting. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take a 5-minute recess. Okay. Oh, am I? Okay, we're back in order. Next on the agenda, item 7.3 is proposed natural areas preservation charter referendum. City Manager Martha Bennett will provide us with an update on the referendum.
And I'm so glad that Ivan stayed without me asking him to stay. It's really great that he's here. The real question here is whether the council wants to have an option, or we're referring an amendment to the city's charter to preserve and enhance habitat and access to nature in 16 specific city-owned natural areas, regardless of whether an alternative measure qualifies for the November of 2021 ballot. So let me say that again. It's whether you want to have the option to refer regardless of whether or not another measure passes. So I'm going to cover the background and then sort of very, very briefly cover sort of the draft that's before you, which is what I recommend if you do want an option that we take out for public comment. And then answer your questions and get your feedback. Okay, so first of all, just as a reminder, back in 1978, the voters of Lake Oswego included Chapter 10 in the city's charter, and it was adopted specifically to prevent the city from building ball fields or other athletic facilities, parking lots, roads, or trails for motorized vehicles in Springbrook Park. And it also specifically excluded the existing tennis center as not part of Springbrook Park. In late 2019, a group of citizens formed after you all actually revoked permission to build an emergency communications tower at the top of Cooks Butte. They formed Love LO Parks, and they filed an initiative petition to amend Chapter 10 of the city charter. And what their amendments would do is extend the protections, essentially, of Chapter 10 to an additional 14 city parks and natural areas. And I'm not going to cover the details. I think that's in your packet. And since it's been out in the community for so long, I'm hopeful that you're all familiar with it. That initiative petition was certified for signature gathering on December 12th, 2019, and petitioners had until December 12th of this year to collect 4,380 signatures. When I drafted the staff report, the petitioners needed an additional 41 signatures to qualify. Since that time, they turned in their signatures, and I think Carrie told me they turned in 4,560 roughly, is that right?
4,588.
Oh, and 88, 4,588 signatures on Wednesday, June 9th, that's last Wednesday. Turning in the signatures kick-started the process to validate signatures, and the city has 15 days to validate the signatures on the petition. And because our elections function is handled by Clackamas County, that's currently being done by the Clackamas County Elections Division. So they have to complete their work by next week, June 24th. If there are sufficient ballot signatures on the petition, the measure needs to be filed at the next city council meeting. And at this time, the earliest time that could happen is July 6th. And I would say that it will be scheduled for you on July 6th. After it's filed with you as a city council, you have 30 days from that filing deadline to do one of three things. And I know the staff report went to only one option, but let me just make sure I cover all of them. First, you can do nothing and just let the initiative go straight to the ballot. Second, you can actually decide that you concur with the petition and recommend or refer the measure to the ballot. Or third, you can refer a competing measure. There are other provisions in Oregon law about initiatives. Many of them pertain to initiatives that are designed to change city code. So for example, if this petition was just to change the municipal code, then you would have the option of just enacting that city code as opposed to sending it to the ballot. But because this is an amendment to the city's charter, it must go to the ballot. And it can only go to the ballot in either a November election or a May election. So in this case, because the deadlines will be met if there's sufficient signatures, this initiative petition, and potentially your competing measure, if that's what you decide to do as a council, would go to the November of 2021 ballot. I can't remember the exact date in November. But essentially all of our requirements are that we have to complete our work on anything going to the November ballot by August 4th, and that's partially because there's an opportunity for folks to challenge the ballot title and some of the explanatory language, and you have to have enough time to let that process run. before basically the first week in September, which is the last day that stuff that has to be to the county to go to the November ballot. Okay, does that all make sense? That's what the timing is. I'm going to say again, your options are, one is you just do nothing when it's filed. Second is you endorse the initiative and agree with it, and it will still go to the ballot with your endorsement, or you refer a competing measure. The last time we talked about this with the city council was actually, I think, the last meeting we had before the lockdown. So it would have been St. Patrick's Day of 2020. And at that time, the council's inclination on this measure was to refer a competing measure, which is why I'm here tonight. And so I brought to you a draft for your consideration. And I am going to cover only that draft. So under the current draft, the proposed draft, we would extend protection to the same parks as in the LO Parks measure, and also add the natural areas portion of Free Ponds Park. Those of you familiar with Free Ponds know there's a developed portion of Free Ponds and a natural area portion of Free Ponds. And then the measure would explicitly allow certain activities, explicitly prohibit certain activities, and then create a process to deal with things that we didn't think about. And I will tell you, in drafting this, staff's goal were first to recognize that conditions change over time. And so we want to make sure that you have the ability to adapt, either if you add additional areas or if something happens in a natural area that requires a certain activity that isn't in place in November of 2021. So the third thing it does is it creates a process for you to adapt if future conditions change. Our second goal is to recognize that we have extensive partnerships with volunteer stewardship groups in many of these parks and natural areas, and we heard from them that they had concerns about whether they'd be allowed to continue their activities.
Yeah.
The third thing is we wanted to recognize that we actually have a really diverse type of natural areas, that these 16 properties that we're talking about are actually really diverse, and that one type of stewardship or management or maintenance activity might be appropriate in one, but might not be appropriate in another, and so we needed to create an ability for us to recognize that diversity. So for example, we know that in some natural areas, parking lots would be appropriate to make sure that parking didn't spill over into another area. In others, it would be inappropriate because of the condition of the natural area. So that would be something that you might consider. So the things that would be explicitly allowed would be maintenance, stewardship, and education activities that promote restoration, including eliminating invasive species, mitigating fire hazards, and removal of hazard trees. Maintenance and renovation of trails, particularly for walking, hiking, people who need mobility devices, horseback riding, and non-motorized bicycle travel. We have written it so that trail construction should be appropriate to the condition of the natural area, rather than specifically specify what kinds of trails are allowed and which kinds of trails are prohibited. So for example, if we were to build the river-to-river trail, which might go through the Cornell Natural Area, and if we were to use grant funding from one of our regional partners that helps facilitate the construction of natural areas, they might want to see us use a hard surface in that trail. So rather than specify what is or isn't, rather we want the surface to be appropriate to the natural area. We'd also make sure that we evaluated that by requiring there to be an environmental assessment of the proposed trail. Construction, maintenance, renovation, and replacement of picnics, shelters, sanitary facilities, boardwalk benches, and interpretive displays would be allowed if they're appropriate to the natural condition. Maintenance of anything that's already there would be allowed, but also renovation or replacement, as long as that renovation or replacement doesn't expand. And then, last but not least, any existing park master plan for a natural area that was adopted before January 1 of next year. I think, Ivan, at this point, we don't have any master plans that have been adopted for any of these that we haven't already implemented. Is that correct?
No, we have a master plan for Bryant Woods and Canal Acres that was adopted but has not been implemented.
All right.
It's fairly old, but I believe that's the only one.
Right. And then the category of activities that would be prohibited would be construction of new athletic facilities, which is the current prohibition, commercial logging, construction of new public streets and roads, and construction or installation of new telecommunications facilities. And then the third category, I think I mentioned before, which was this charter amendment would create a process so that the city could master plan any one of these natural areas. It does include provisions to make sure that we're required to do rather extensive public engagement, because I know one of the concerns of folks in the community is that we not master plan without their involvement, and they want to be part of any process that we have. So that's essentially what the measure does. There is one major question that at the staff level we couldn't resolve, which is how do we actually identify to make sure that we're very clear and transparent to the voters what portions of some of these parks we're talking about, because Springbrook, West Waluga, Three Ponds have developed and undeveloped portions. And so I'd love your feedback on this. There's there's two options. One is we do the best we can to develop a legal description that would go into the measure and be adopted as part of this. My only concern about that is I know about the conversation we're having about Helen Ann Woods, for example, and we'd have to make a sort of a time-based decision, and I don't want to foreclose anything that could happen there. And we also would want to make sure we got it right. The second option is to adopt a map. I think if you decide you want to go that route as a council, what we would want to do for you is prepare the map to be available to you and to the voters in advance of your referral of the measure, even though the way this is tentatively drafted, you wouldn't actually adopt the map until after you knew whether or not this amendment was adopted by the voters. The last thing I'll say before I'll ask Ivan if he has any additional feedback or take your questions is that when there are two side-by-side measures on the ballot, under Oregon law, whichever one gets the most yes votes is the one that is adopted. So they could both pass. And whichever one gets more, not a higher percentage of votes, the higher number of affirmative votes. And that, if you want to know any more about that, you have to ask the city attorney, and it is his first day, well, his first council meeting, so it is really cruel.
Second day.
But that's what Oregon law says, is if there are competing measures, the one that receives a higher number of yes votes is the one that prevails. All right, so that is it, unless, Ivan, you have anything to add.
I do not.
Would we, the map, if we went the map, it's a legal description, would we adopt that then by ordinance, but prior to the vote?
Well, the way that would be a city attorney question. I think you could adopt it by ordinance in advance and then re-adopt it after the measure passes.
Okay. So, well, go ahead, Councilwoman. Go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. I think it's very clear. We're pretty close in many ways. I look at charter changes really need to include the long-range vision, and I think you've done that review, and I think our vision helps us do that, and I think we're, I'm in support in general of the idea that we probably should have something on the charter on our parks. But have we reached out to the Lovello Parks group to say, hey, here's our charter proposal, we'll get it on an ordinance, we'll get it done in September or whatever, and get it on the books, and then we wouldn't have to go through the whole election?
Well, again, if you're going to put something in the city charter, it has to go to the voters. It has to go to an election. And let me sort of answer the other question. Staff has not met formally with Lovello Parks. I do know that there are members of the community that have met with the leaders of Lovello Parks with the draft language and had a conversation about it. At this point, and I think I received an email from Mr. Scott Hanley yesterday, basically saying that they don't agree with this alternative proposal.
Okay. Would it be helpful to have a subcommittee of the city council sit down, or do you think that would not be?
I definitely think one of the things we would do in public engagement, if you decide that you want to consider, you want to leave open the possibility of a referral, is we would include Lovello Parks, a formal meeting with Lovello Parks as part of our public outreach process.
Okay. And I like the map idea, descriptions of things, put people asleep. So definitely map.
And I was last night, the city's got all the historical archives, like very fun to go through. So back when, so the Molalla Parks measure, of course, takes this charter amendment that was passed back in 1978. So it's a specific point in time for one, park in the community. So it's kind of looking back to what was going on in the community at that time, and I came across this document. It's called the Lake Oswego Community Goals, and it was written in 1974. So at that time, we were just kind of growing into the city that we are today. And many of the goals that they listed in that plan back in 1974 included the development of the East End into the commercial center, even development of the West End. We know now is Lake Grove into an area of village character. But within all of this, as they were seeking to grow the city, their first priority they listed was the preservation of the natural environment and stewardship of open spaces. And so I think we've seen over the years how community members engage through city process, democratic elections, and otherwise to be excellent stewards of the land, through volunteerism, through municipal investments we've made, and through advocacy. And so now here we are, 40 years later, more than a generation later, and we're carrying those same traditions forward. But we recognize items of community importance that would never have been considered back in the 70s. Climate change, accessibility, and the management of now, what we have here in LO, a full parks system in a fully developed, community. It's a much different situation. And cell phones. Yes. Cell phones that were smaller than a car. So we remember, as a community, we're all, we're run by residents, all of us. So the city, the city is the community. So we do know that, change, change is constant. And while some ordinances and things to do, that we might pass today will stand the test of time, that others need to remain flexible as conditions change. And as a community, we have the flexibility with ordinances because they can be updated, they can be changed, they can be set aside through regular course, right? But with charter amendment, it's not the case. So I think we have to recognize that the how, will sometimes change, like the way we manage, the way that we preserve and improve. Those methods, change over time as our knowledge improves. But our community values to be good stewards, to protect the nature around us, that's a constant. That's something that's been with us for all the past and brought us to where we are today. So this measure that the city, is looking to sponsor, I think it speaks to those values while allowing future generations to exercise the same good judgment and collaborative, engaging community process in forming and implementing plans as we've seen past leaders do now for generations. With the aim of responding to actions, goals, and objectives that, some of us, don't like is not how we function. So there will always, under all circumstances, be disagreements. It's the nature of community. It's how we come together, and we listen, we work together, and we think of the hardest to serve while centering our values and hear one another that moves us forward. So I think this, city-sponsored measure is something I can fully get behind. I applaud the efforts of the community members, who are putting forth the Love LO Parks measure. But we had to recognize that its origins are really rooted in distrust. And that's not how we come, together as a community, and that's not how we become the city that we are today. So, but at the same time, it's not without positive attributes. I think what we have here incorporates the good elements of the Love LO Parks measure with an approach to our natural areas that's, born from sacred community trust and established processes. And I think it's a measure everyone can get behind. Those are my comments. Councilor Wynn.
Well, thank you. Certainly, I think that it's more than evident that people are very passionate about this topic. I think that having that many people sign the petition, I think it's obvious. And I think that what from a practical standpoint, what's worrisome to me is that we potentially have two competing measures on the ballot. And I think we have time between now and then to figure out, and certainly, as we, much in the work we do, there are often opposing viewpoints, but our job is to figure out what can we all come to agree on. And I think that ultimately I'd like to see and have one one item on the ballot for us to all vote on, rather than having two, because I think that just having two is just so much uncertainty, because I think that if one passes the other, there's always going to be some people that aren't going to be in agreement. But I think that there's also the danger of, I think that as staff has pointed out, there are some potential liabilities that if we do, if a measure does pass that has not had the full legal review and the resources that we have as a city to be able to make sure that we don't create more unintended consequences, which could potentially also kind of hamstring our efforts to preservation anyways. So I think that it's in our best interest to figure out whether that's in the form of a committee or a task force, something to work with LO Parks and other people in the community to figure out something that we can all agree on. I know that it's a tall measure to ask, but I think that, as we go into this, I think that if we can try to figure out, make it our common goal that we have one measure, not two, and not to duke it out in the public arena, because I think that, we owe it to our community to be able to come up with something that makes sense, that's going to keep us from having to have a court challenge or spend more resources and then end up having to have this drawn out longer than it needs to. So I think that in this case here, but we also got to keep our options open. So I would support us, whether that means, I don't know how that works out, but in terms of providing our staff and our city to be able to have that option to, if we need to, the worst case would be that we have two competing measures on it, but I want to keep that option open.
I mean, just a comment that the members of the community, that have been working, helping on this draft and stuff, have been engaging. I think it's a good idea to continue to engage with Lovella Parks. The measure that they're putting forward, I mean, they can't change, right? They can't change it now. Either they put their measure on or they don't put their measure on.
So maybe if we were able to, I think, I know it's a tall order, but I think can it be that, that we come to an agreement on a measure that is acceptable to everyone, and then ask them to kindly withdraw?
Right. Well, so that's what the community. I mean, I think one of the it's a laudable goal, but as I stated, because the origins of this measure come from distrust, I think that's the problem that we're having immediately, is that entering into a conversation where we're not a trusted party.
I certainly understand that. I want to give the benefit of the doubt that it's healthy skepticism, right? I think it's healthy skepticism that we're making sure that we're all being held accountable. So I wouldn't so push as far as distrust. I want to give the people that have worked so hard on this just the benefit of the doubt that it is just healthy skepticism, and work from that.
Right.
And assume the best of intentions.
You will lead the task force. Councilor Boop.
Yes, it's very difficult. I have talked to Mr. Hanley, and I talked to many people around these measures. I think when someone has 4,000 people who sign a petition, it's really something that's legitimate. I mean, and so we have to recognize that rather than going against them in a kind of war, we can see what do they want. And that's why I wanted to ask Ivan if what in their petition is something that will be a problem in the future for the city.
We have to be really careful, just so you're clear, that staff can provide you only with factual information, not with opinion about whether a measure is good or bad.
Yeah,
I think you could talk about some of the experiences we've had managing Springbrook Park with the measure in place. I don't think you can talk about with Chapter 10.
Yeah,
I understand your question, Counselor, but we've gotten some very excellent advice from the city attorney in the past about not speculating about whether the initiative is good or bad for the parks.
Can I continue? Because I mean, these folks, I am in a place that I am against touching our natural areas. I am for, being good stewardship of our natural spaces, because it's We are not talking about now, about 20, we're talking about 100 years, about generations to come, and we owe them that. And like, we are just elected for the maximum of 8 years, we'll go. We've seen administration of the American government that came and destroyed total spaces, log parks. We've seen that. We've seen Donald Trump allowing people to go to the polls to drill oil. We've seen that. So we can be those folks. So I mean, if the people of Lake Oswego are deciding to say, hey, we want to be the steward of our parks, it's a legitimate question. I'm not against. All I am against is like when we say, oh, you guys, as a city, you cannot allow ADA, like our regalian functions, it has to be exercised everywhere. But I am also for the protection of our parks. And is there a possibility that we meet with them as a city and talk to them and say, what is that you want? And we can find a common ground, because I think we all love Lake Oswego. We all want to protect the natural areas. I am afraid that if we go this route, because if you just cannot come tell the city that you cannot do your job as a city, because we have our parks and recreation, we do all that, I agree. But when I read their petition, I want, and that's my question, Ivan is the one who operates in the park area. I want him or anyone in the city who tell us what is in this petition that's an impediment to what we are doing as a government, as a local government. And if there are some, we can go and talk to them about that. Or if it's really an impediment, we have our own stuff that we have to run, and the citizen will make the decision at the end of the day. But we need to know, like I've been reading and say, what is that? So is it something, like I'm not asking for advice, I'm asking for technical.
I think that the difficulty is staff can't speculate. And so I think the only question we can answer is, how has the current Chapter 10 affected our ability to manage Springbrook Park?
Yeah, that's what I want, yeah.
I think that's the only question we can answer.
Well, and just to, we're not, here today as like the first step, right? So we got to recognize that we're here today because other community members, right, have come forward with grave concerns about this member. Community members who, dedicated decades to our natural areas and their preservation. So these. I just think just so we recognize that this is not step one. We're already kind of at step 20, So for instance, when you look at the development of Iron Mountain, that's a park development that could not have happened with this proposal, just as an example. So those are, we as a city, it's like the people in the community, right, that enliven our parks. So we want to put things, when we develop a park like Iron Mountain, we put in facilities, we make it accessible so that folks can come and they can enjoy. And when folks come and appreciate nature and become a part of it, then we as a community become better stewards, of our natural area. We're not looking to create areas with no people. We're looking to make our parks accessible, and every area is unique. Some require more accessibility than others. Every park is different. So what we don't want is a one-size-fits-all measure.
But so, no, I wanted to continue to, can Ivan tell us, what, and from what Ivan is telling us, if there's any problem, we have to find an alternative to this measure, and we go to this population of Lake Oswego and tell them this is why we have an alternative measure. But I have to be at ease when I respond to those questions coming from the technicians, coming from people who are, directly impacted by what is happening. I know I work with many people on park. I can give an example of Mike Buck, who my teachers, my staff thought he was an employee of the city because he's working hard on those parks. So, and I talked to him about this. He has an idea, so I respect. But we have to know what is unreasonable in what this petition is, and then from there, because we need to have everything we are doing, we ask for the city staff that, advise us on this technical stuff. And from there, we are not asking for advice or anything but we ask why. And this is my question. What is can we let Ivan answer?
No. The difference is that once the initiative petition was certified for signature gathering, another provision of state law kicked in, which means that no city resources can be used to advocate in favor or in opposition to the initiative petition. So no one on city staff can speculate either about the good things or the bad things about the initiative petition. And having been on the bad side of what happens if someone disagrees with what city staff do, we cannot offer any advice to you about whether the Love LO Parks measure is good or bad. All we can do is say people have come to us and identified some problems, and I think the mayor articulated some of them. And it's really a question for all of you about whether you want the option. If you don't want the option, that's fine. I guess the last thing I'd just like to say is I assume that regardless of whether or not we have a meeting, now that this measure has reached the signature threshold, if it qualifies for the ballot, it's going to the ballot. So the measure, the Love LO Parks measure, is going to the ballot.
And they cannot withdraw it.
As currently drafted.
But they cannot withdraw.
Can they withdraw it, Jason?
Withdraw. No. Then let's have.
So, yeah.
Well, Councilor Mance, thank you for your
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate what Councilor Mook said about longevity and the fact that we're not going to be here forever, and nor are the folks who are writing the other measure. What we do here has the potential to impact people for hundreds of years. So I feel it's incumbent upon us to allow the flexibilities for changing conditions, such as climate change. That's a big one. Our forests may not look, our natural spaces in 15 years may not look as they look today. We can't have anything that would constrain our ability to maintain what we have and perhaps add to what's in there, which would be something more than maintenance. And I don't know if the ballot measure that's being put forth, LO Loves Trees, would allow for us to do that. We could end up with a wholesale madrona or white oak grove in 10 years. So I think that we as a city need to put forth our measure for that longevity for the future and also for the past. As the mayor pointed out, the people who have worked over the past 40 years to make 80, to create our open spaces. We don't want to constrain our citizenry. If anyone heard Megan Big John from Parks on NPR today talking about why we were able to work as quickly and as well as we did in our open spaces after the windstorm, a big part of that was our friends groups. And she cited that. That's what 9 friends groups have been helping on the windfall. and I can't say it as eloquently as she did, but it brought a tear to my eye. To constrain that aspect of our city civic life would be insanity. So I am 100% that we should move forward with our own ballot initiative in order that we protect what those folks have done and what the future is going to bring, and the changes and the new conditions that will indicate.
Thank you, Councilor Mintz. Councilor Rapp?
So they've collected 4,500-ish signatures, which is about 10% of our community. As elected officials in Lake Oswego, we are charged to represent the entire community, not just 10%. So it's our job to try to make sure that all of Lake Oswego is represented in these decisions, so we're here to do the other 90%. I agree with you, Mayor Buck, that I think we need to prepare ourselves for whatever happens by preparing our own initiative. But also, the term feedback as a gift comes to mind here. What this group has done, which has brought to our attention some things that we probably may not have looked at if this didn't come up. And so without them bringing this initiative to us, it allows us to improve upon it. I don't see this as an antagonistic approach. I see this as us taking something, we see some holes, we're going to improve it, make something that everybody's going to be happy with. So.
Yeah, good point. It's exactly right. Yeah, we would not be putting this forward if it wasn't for the initiative petition, so. Councilor Burdick.
Thank you, Mayor. I will make this very brief because Councilor Raff and Councilor Mans have really touched on the same points that I wholeheartedly agree on. Again, I think bringing this measure to the table has allowed us as a city to reflect on what are we doing and what can we do better. And also look at that measure and say, what's the intent and how can we make sure that it's going to be a positive for today as well as 30, 40, 100 plus years down the road. I'll just point out one of my concerns is with the proposed measure is the fact that it potentially limits accessibility to our natural areas. And as we, I think we want to make sure that people, if they're in a wheelchair or have difficulty and need a hard surface, that we have areas that they can access and that we're not limiting. So that's just something that's really important to me. Because nature is soothing and it's healing, and I want everyone to be able to have accessibility. That doesn't mean that every path needs to be paved and have that feature, but I think we need to be able to expand where we need to expand. I think we need to be good neighbors to our neighborhoods, and so if parking is needed and can be thoughtfully added and not do any harm to the nature, I think we need to be able to propose that, as well as, maybe some picnic tables or some small things, so that again, our parks are used while at the same time educating our citizens of the nature areas, the parks. How do we care for them? How do we adapt to climate change? How do we make this a positive? So I think we need to be very strategic, and I think, again, because of this measure coming to the table, we can now reflect, we can reach out to the community, do further engagement so that the measure that we're proposing really does a good balance of everything. So I'm very appreciative of the work of our citizens in this from all aspects.
Thank you, Councilor Burdick. So is that clear direction? No.
I think we're going to go do some public engagement around
Okay.
a potential measure and come
Very
back
good.
to you. I do think that we'll need to add a special meeting in late July. I think you saw that. All
Yes. Yes, on the 27th.
Yep.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
So
Councilor.
in thinking of that, so again, so it sounds like we'll probably likely advance our own ballot, I don't know what the right term, measure, right, or initiative?
It would be a
Charter amendment.
referendum.
A referendum, okay, I don't know what to call it. Well,
You
we'll
guys
give it
don't
that
get to
some-
do initiatives, the citizens get to do initiatives. You
Okay.
get to do referendum.
So in anticipation of that, we should probably, I think we might have talked about this individually or maybe collectively, but it's going to require a campaign.
That'll be something that folks outside this building will have to take care of.
Okay, and so So are
As
you saying,
elected officials, you can do whatever you want. I don't want to say what, you can do whatever you
Right.
want, but
Okay.
you can't spend city resources on anything that's going before the voters.
okay, so, yeah, I just want to put that in the universe so that we will have to get resources in place and campaign.
Right.
No, yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean.
Microphone.
We vote this, I think we should meet. We should meet. As a not as a, we have to meet and do something, because if we are doing this, we better make people aware that we have this initiative and this is why we are doing it.
Well, that's right. If we put this forward as a council,
Yeah.
it's very important that the seven of us are
Yes.
aligned 100%, standing
Yeah.
with fellow community members and advancing it forward. Okay.
And let me say out loud again, until you actually refer it, you haven't referred it. So you always have the
Right.
option to decide not to refer
Right.
an alternative measure.
So if this process goes through and we decide to refer it, then we have to hit the deadline of July 24th or something.
I think the deadline is August 3rd, and that
Right.
is to allow sufficient time for there to be a ballot title challenge. You normally take a council recess in August, though, and I didn't want you to bump up right against the deadline if there was some.
Right, so my question is there any issue with us? They can't petition not to have it in, or, I mean, is there any?
Well, they can challenge your ballot title, they can challenge the question or the caption or the explanatory statement.
But that would not put into jeopardy it getting onto the ballot. In other words, do we have to have this earlier, is I guess what I'm
I
saying?
think we've given you sufficient time
Okay,
to allow
Okay.
that process to take.
okay. And just for the record, I am 100% support of your eloquent statements. And I think the paper was turned in and we're correcting it slightly and turning back a revised, better revision. So, okay, I'm good with
Okay,
that.
thanks, Councilor Willand. Okay, very good. We'll schedule the special meeting and move forward with the community engagement. Thank you, Mr. Anderholm.
Do we have to pay for the electricity in the building when we have that meeting? No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
We'll figure it out. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so that concludes study sessions for this evening. Moving on to council business. First, won't go too far, Mr. Anderholm. First item of council business is the awarding of the indoor tennis center contract. And joining us is a gentleman. Hello.
Hey, how are you? I'm Bruce Powers,
Hello, Mr.
project
Powers.
manager. I'm not just some stranger showing up to
have
pop
you.
in for a chat.
Good to have you here.
You have 3 minutes. No, I'm just kidding.
That's all I need. I think Ivan needs a break anyway. He's been working hard. Thank you. Good evening. I have submitted a package to you all concerning the tennis center. Don't have a formal presentation. The overview is just basically we have, for the past 20 years, there's been surveys and all kinds of things done to identify some of the big issues with the tennis center. The big ticket items we want to address are the improved parking to provide ADA access. We want to provide ADA access into the building as well. We want to develop a new front desk with a lobby space, create some court viewing spaces. Currently, everyone has to view court activity from the court itself. So we have proposed, a mezzanine and a couple of great spaces where you can sit and actually view all 4 courts. We're going to provide new restrooms, provide Lisa with an actual office space, and create some new meeting space in the building as well. It's about 3,100 square feet of improvement on the building. We went out, got bids. The low bid came in for Baldwin General Contracting at a little over $1.6 million. And the funding sources are we had $1.6 million in bond and we had $200,000 in tennis funds. So with our architectural and engineering fees, we're slightly over that 1.8 at 1.875 total. But we're asking that you consider funding the $1,612,261. So I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the design or the engineering or any funding issues you might have.
Can I make a motion?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'd like to move to authorize the city manager to sign a contract with Baldwin General Contracting in the amount of $1,612,261 for the renovation of the Lake Oswego Indoor Tennis Center.
Second, oh, go ahead. On behalf of the tennis community.
Yeah.
Well, let me
And
just
I
say.
don't play tennis.
Well, let me just say how much I love this tennis center proposal. Is there any discussion? Councilman, anything?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was just going to make a motion. But while I have the microphone, this has been a long time coming. And I am just delighted, as is the tennis community, who's been lobbying me over the past 6 years. And I am just thrilled that we're getting to this point. Get it done.
We're excited about it.
Very good. Okay. All right. All in favor? All in favor of this approving this contract, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That's fine. Okay. Passes unanimously.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. Okay, next item on the agenda, 8.2, is 2021 Council Goals Update from City Manager Bennett.
I'm not going to talk very long, other than to tell you back in February, you adopted 8 major strategic goals with 18 initiatives underneath them. You're making progress in all 18, which is really, really amazing. So good job, council, good job, staff, for all of the work that's done to advance your agenda. I would note just a few things. We've actually finished one. That's the one around updating our fireworks and outdoor burning policies. You made some really big decisions around the wastewater treatment plant project, the community dialogue on policing, and the DEI task force recommendations already this year. You included funds for several of these initiatives in your budget, and you're going to have a big summer. We just talked about the Recreation and Aquatics Center, and you'll see the IGA on that. You'll also see the disposition and development agreement for the North Anchor project this summer. You'll also see, if you see the updates on House Bill 2001, and a variety of other pieces of progress. Because I always like to include it, I also attached your working agreements for how you're going to conduct your business. And I think it's sort of apt that we did it tonight, because it's your first in-person meeting. So I always ask the department heads to revisit our agreements quarterly, and so if there's anything y'all have to say about that, you can tell me now or later. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Bennett. Thank you for the city's support, and
Still no
we're doing lots of good work.
Still no smoking on driveways.
Oh my gosh. Next item on the agenda, item 8.3, is Resolution 21-19. This is the appointment of members to the Middle Housing Code Advisory Committee, the MHCAC, to provide high-level policy guidance to the Planning Commission on middle housing implementation. Mr. Siegel and I work to appoint or recommend folks to this committee based on what we passed at our last meeting, and we have recommendations for the council to approve. Mr. Siegel.
Thank you, Mayor Buck. Good evening, members of the council. The mayor has described the purpose of the resolution. It does follow on Resolution 21-18, which created the Ad Hoc Advisory Committee for Middle Housing Code Amendments, and this resolution would fill the committee, appoint the committee. According to the city charter, the mayor makes the appointments, and then the council votes on the appointments, although the mayor does not vote in that process. So that's the only procedural comment I'd make. The committee itself is modeled after other ad hoc committees that the council has appointed in the past for different various planning and community development initiatives. And in asking the mayor how he would want to structure the committee, really the goal was to create a body that would leverage the expertise, the knowledge, and the values of this community by drawing on the advisory boards, the commissions, and volunteers with our neighborhood associations, as well as expertise in the community on housing and real estate finance, affordable housing interests, and other stakeholders. So that's really the purpose and the scope, and the staff is recommending approval of Resolution 21-19.
Okay, someone like to make a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Councilor Banks.
Second.
Okay, is there any
I
discussion?
know we're all getting used to the microphone button, so got you there, Daniel.
I'll just thank the community members who stepped forward to serve on this ad hoc advisory committee. Thanks to Councilor Verdict, she'll serve as our council liaison. We appreciate her time as well. Okay, Ms. Linder, you call the roll?
Councilors Burdick,
Yes.
Rapp,
Yes.
Mbu,
Yes.
Mans,
Yes.
Wynn,
Yes.
and Winland.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thanks, Mr. Siegel. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have Resolution 21-09, which is authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the cities of Sandy, Molalla, Canby, Oregon City, and Gladstone of their police departments for warrant confirmation and after-hours priority entry and removal of stolen vehicles, firearms, and articles. This is a renewal of an existing agreement. We have Resolution 21-10, which is approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the City of West Linn for public safety communication services provided by LOCOM for a term of 4 years. I'll note this is the 37th year that we've been in partnership with the City of West Linn, and last night they approved their side of this intergovernmental agreement for continuing partnership on this and other matters. We're Resolution 21-16, which adjusts the compensation for management and confidential employees. Resolution 21-21, which authorizes me to sign the 21-22 intergovernmental subrecipient grant agreement with Clackamas County Social Services Division, and we have approval of meeting minutes for April 20th, May 4th, and May 18th. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes unanimously. For information from council, first off, I would like to give a hearty welcome to Jason Luce, our new city attorney. This is his first meeting.
Yay.
Welcome. First meeting and second day on the job. So.
Are you going to come back tomorrow?
That's right. I was thinking too, it's great to have you here. We're all looking forward to working with you. I know you have lots of people to meet within the city, and we're here to support you as a council as best we can, and we appreciate the support that you'll give to us in the years to come. As we were talking about parks, both the recreation center, the referendum, just thinking about how important accessible parks are, to the community, and just wanted to, float an idea as we, recently we've had several instances over this past, months of, vandalism on the Beluga water towers, and important to note that actually one of the vandals was caught on security cameras that we have installed, which is great, but this is not just, any whatever kind of vandalism. I mean, these are hate symbols that, apparently juveniles are drawing on the water towers, and in other instances, happening throughout town. So as we talk about welcoming spaces, making parks accessible, to people, I think that includes the environment itself, making sure that when we're going to invest all of this money in a new aquatic center and all the money we invest in our parks, making sure that these are hate-free spaces, and that folks in town that want to participate in this kind of hate-filled graffiti language or otherwise that make our spaces unwelcoming to people themselves will, for whatever period of time, not be allowed, in those facilities, so that they are welcoming to other members of the community through whatever means. It's just something to think about, kind of a hate-free zone in our parks. So maybe something we can work on as we go ahead. That's all I have. Anyone have anything? Ms. Bennett?
Just a couple of things. First, just a little reminder that the library is reopening tomorrow. And just in time, the Clackamas County move to low means we can increase the capacity of folks who are able to visit the library. And perhaps the most exciting thing from my perspective is that all 3 floors are going to be open for browsing, including the children's library. I know you probably all remember that we had some concerns originally about the children's library because it's down in that lower level of the library and there's only 1 stairwell, but it looks like we can provide safe access. So the saddest day of 2020, in my view, was the day that Melissa and I decided to close the library, and so this might be the happiest day so far for me in 2021. The second saddest day was the day my kid had to have drive-up graduation, so if he's watching right now, he's very sad that it was the second saddest day. I also want to just note that the boutique opened on Friday last week, and they seem to be already doing good business. I'm grateful to Councilor Mans for spending money down there. And last but not least, we have set a tentative grand opening date for this facility for September 21st, which is your second meeting in September. That'll allow us to have schools back in session, so this can be a community event, not just a city event where we focus on having a meeting, but rather we can really have folks in the community gather. I also know that Ivan's still here, and he and I have had a chance to talk about trying to have a community end of COVID sort of event commemoration / celebration, because I think we all need to recognize it's not just joyful reopening, but it's also recognition of the toll the pandemic's taken on the people of our community and state and world, for that matter. So as soon as we have some ideas around that, we'll be talking with you about that. Okay, anybody have questions for me about anything else?
You have to wear masks to this event?
We might have a giant bonfire so that you can burn
Mask
your mask,
bonfire.
but I have to check with DEQ. Yeah, I can't have a fire. It'll have to be, I'm sorry, Counselor, it'll have to be in January. That's funny. That's funny. Thank you.
But there will be fireworks.
Only if we have it in January will there be fireworks.
Wow.
That's right. No driveway smoking.
I'd like to, recognize City Recorder, Ms. Linder, and her team too for getting the meeting ready, preparing us for this day. I know it's a big change. And Mr. Wes Payton and his team in IT, who also I know spent a lot of time getting all of this. There's lots of fancy stuff. Thank you all it's big changes, from over a year of virtual meetings to now the in-person, and we'll just move forward. We're all used to this, so just hope it stays that way, right? And so thank you all. With that, we are adjourned.
Great to see everyone.